Good morning, everyone. At least it's morning when I'm making this video. It may be evening time or nighttime when you are watching it, but to me, it's morning and it's Friday morning, so it's a great day. So whether you're watching this video now or you're watching this video a year from now, hopefully you can learn a few things today. So the targets I'm going to be discussing today come from Content Standard 1.2C and 1.2D, and later we will talk about 1.2E. So let's get started. The very first one we're talking about is analyzing the use of Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre as propaganda. So most of you will remember this picture that's here on the right side. Now, it's called the Bloody Massacre. It was made by Paul Revere, and this particular picture was used as something called propaganda. Now, some of you may have never heard that word. That word is actually on our word wall here. So if we look at the definition, propaganda is information that is given in a biased way so that it is meant to show only one point of view. Now, when we talked about the Boston Massacre, earlier we talked about how the colonists had kind of started that entire conflict because they were the ones that were throwing snowballs at the British soldiers. They were calling them names. They were making fun of them. And that's the reason why one of the British soldiers felt threatened and ended up firing to the crowd. But when you look at this picture, that's not what it looks like. Okay, it just looks like the British soldiers are just firing into a crowd of innocent colonists. And that makes you kind of look at the picture in a different way, right? So this picture can be considered propaganda because the picture is biased from the start. Paul Revere, the guy that made it, was a patriot. And as soon as the Boston Massacre happened, he decided he was going to make a picture that was going to sway people to the patriot cause. So he drew the Bloody Massacre, his engraving of the Boston Massacre, to sway people's emotions, to make them feel bad for the colonists, and to make the British look like monsters. I mean, I think it's a universal idea that murder is wrong. And in this picture, it looks like the British soldiers are just completely murdering the colonists without any regard to their health or safety. I mean, it just looks like they're terrified. That's just the way that it's drawn. So this picture is used to influence people to make sure that they would go over to the colonial side, that they might look at the British in a different light. They might not like them as much. So Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre was used as propaganda during the American Revolution, or especially at the beginning of the American Revolution. So as we go on here, we're going to move on to the next content standard. But first, you need to make sure that your eyes are on the screen just for a few seconds. You guys know exactly what to do with this particular slide. Make sure you email me with your answer if you're wanting that free homework pass. Going on to the next portion, Content Standard 1.3D. We have the rejection of the Olive Branch Petition. So the Olive Branch Petition, few things about it. The Olive Branch Petition was a piece of paper. It was sent by the Second Continental Congress. The Olive Branch Petition was the last-ditch effort by the colonists to try to make peace with Britain. And eventually, King George rejects the Olive Branch Petition. So I can tell you, you guys took a little bit of time and you looked through the Olive Branch Petition and you got to read one that I had reworked and kind of put into better English. But throughout most of the document, the colonists are kind of they're sucking up to the king a little bit. They call him Your Majesty. They continue to talk about how they want peace and they want prosperity in their relationship with Britain moving forward, not only in the present day, but also for all of the future generations of those in the colonies and in Britain. And they talk about how both of their countries can be great if they work together. So the colonists really, they kind of have swallowed their pride when they write the Olive Branch Petition. And traditionally, the olive branch is the symbol of peace. That's why they called this the Olive Branch Petition. So the Second Continental Congress gets together. They're really trying to avoid war. So they get together and they write the Olive Branch Petition. They send it off to King George, hoping that it will provide peace for the colonists and for Britain for pretty much the rest of their lives. But King George ultimately doesn't even look at the Olive Branch Petition. He rejects the thing. He doesn't even look at it. And this is definitely going to anger the colonists moving forward, especially into our next content standard that we're going to talk about. So the Olive Branch Petition, sent by the Second Continental Congress. It was a last-ditch effort by the colonists for peace with Britain. And King George ultimately rejected the Olive Branch Petition. Here on the slides, I had a few. This is the rewritten version of the olive branch petition that I made. So if you want to pause it and take a look at these 3 slides, here's the first one. Here we have the olive branch petition continued. And here's the last one. So if you want to take some time and you want to read through that, it'll probably give you a better understanding of what the colonists were actually trying to do, trying to put aside their differences to try to avoid a war with Britain ultimately. Okay? So we just talked about Paul Revere's engraving in the Boston Massacre and its use as propaganda. And we talked about the rejection of the olive branch petition by King George III. So let's move on to the very, very last one. Content Standard 8.3e. This is the very last one of 8.3. This is what we are talking about. We talked about yesterday, actually. So Content Standard 8.1.3e. Analyze the grievances which motivated the Second Continental Congress to make arguments for and to declare independence from Great Britain, thus creating the United States of America. Yeah, this is where John Green on his Crash Course videos would cue the Libertage. Some of you that watch that, you would know what I mean. If not, you probably just think I'm a weirdo right now. So I'm just going to move on. So we're going to talk about the grievances which motivated the Second Continental Congress to make arguments for and declare independence from Britain. So the first thing you need to understand is that the Declaration of Independence, if you look it up in any history textbook, you're going to see that it is divided into 4 separate sections. And those 4 separate sections list out the 4 separate parts of the Declaration of Independence. The one that we're dealing with today is the one that deals with the grievances of the colonists. And most of you have probably heard words that sound like grievance, like grieve, like what you do when someone close to you dies or something like that. But grievance is something a little bit different. A grievance is an official statement of a complaint over something believed to be wrong or unfair. I think yesterday when I talked about this particular idea with my classes, I tried to make an example really of middle school relationships. One, because I think that they're funny because 2 weeks is a long-term relationship, but that's beside the point. So I used the example of a girl yesterday. Let's say a girl was in a relationship with a boy, and she had found out that that boy wasn't treating her right, wasn't treating her with respect. He was talking to other girls behind her back. He'd given another girl his Netflix password, which is the ultimate betrayal, by the way. He has a longer snap streak with that girl than he has with his actual girlfriend, so she decides, enough is enough, I'm going to break up with him. So when she texts him to break up with him, because that's the popular thing to do, she texts him and says, yo, we are over, we're done. And the guy texts back and says, oh man, no, I don't want to break up. I don't understand why we're breaking up. Can you give me some reasons as to why we're breaking up? And she says, sure, here, let me tell you, I'm breaking up with you because you were talking to other girls, because you gave another girl your Netflix password, because you have a longer snap streak with that girl, because you've been liking her Instagram pictures. All of those reasons that she lists as breaking up with him, those could be considered grievances. They're complaints over something believed to be wrong or unfair. So hopefully that helps you understand grievances. So in the Declaration of Independence, the colonists write an entire section on the things that they believe to be wrong or unfair that King George actually did. And through that, here's a few of the grievances that are actually listed in the Declaration. The colonists have no say in determining the laws that govern them, right? Because the king made those laws. The colonists refuse to relinquish or give up the right to representation. There are no elections. Therefore, colonists are unable to protect themselves from convulsions. Foreigners are unable to become citizens. The king determines how long a judge's term will be. Colonists have been lodging troops in their home. The king took the rights of the people in Canada away, and they feared he would do the same to the colonists. The king hired mercenary soldiers to bring death and destruction to the colonists. So all of these things really, they're things that the king actually did to the colonists, things that the colonists felt that the king had wronged them with. So the king stationed soldiers in the colonies without the colonists' permission. That would be one of the grievances that's in the Declaration of Independence. So these grievances, ultimately, these are going to be the big reasons that the colonists list out. They say, King George III, we don't like you. And these are the reasons why we don't like you, and therefore we are going to declare independence from you in the future, very, very soon, actually. And as soon as they do that, we finally get to the point that we've been talking about the last 2 weeks where we become the United States of America. We're no longer British colonies. We're finally our own country. We're a baby country, but we're finally our own country. But little do the colonists know that they tried to do this because they thought it was the right thing, but it's actually going to lead to war, because the king is going to declare them to be an open rebellion against the British Empire. So it's going to be a huge problem for the colonists moving forward. Hopefully, you guys got something out of this video. If you were absent, hopefully this helped you a little bit to understand what we talked about the last few days. So the few targets that we talked about Paul Revere's engraving of the Boston Massacre. And we talked about analyzing the rejection of the Olive Branch Petition by King George III. And we also talked about the grievances that motivated the Second Continental Congress to make arguments for and to declare independence from Great Britain, thus creating the United States of America. So guys, that was about 11 minutes. Hopefully you've got something out of it. And if you guys have any questions, you can leave them in the comments. You can email me. You can talk to me in class. You can try to talk to me face-to-face. I'd love to talk to you face-to-face. So anyways, if you have questions, bring them to me. Otherwise, I will talk to you guys later. See ya.